What is going on, everyone, and happy 4th of July, which should kind of explain why I'm dressed like a freaking picnic table. I mean, I do kind of look like a tablecloth right now, I'll be honest. But that is neither here nor there. Today we're going to be talking about some graphics card. Well, also we got some CPU storage. Basically, we got some tech news. Mostly it's about graphics cards, but yeah, there's one about Ryzen as well, so yeah. So, starting off with AMD, who have recently reconfirmed the release of RX Vega at SIGGRAPH at the end of the month. That is a big event that's going on in Los Angeles, so they're going to be holding their Capsaicin event during SIGGRAPH, during the event which is going on from July 30th until August 3rd, so that is when we will finally get the official release of RX Vega graphics cards, probably reference cards at first, with the aftermarket cards soon to follow sometime in the month of August. I would hope to see those as soon as possible after the release. They confirmed this via a tweet. Actually, the Radeon RX team said, "We can't wait to announce our new Vega products, including RX, at this year's SIGGRAPH. Make sure to follow us for more details." And a few people had asked them, down below, about this, and Jason Evangelos said, "We made a promise to launch RX Vega during SIGGRAPH. And in fact, our CEO made that promise, and we're going to keep it." And one more person even asked how they felt about the current meltdown, their words, that is happening right now on forums because of the Frontier Edition gaming performance, which I discussed just yesterday in a pretty lengthy video, if you guys want to go back and check that one out. To which Jason Evangelo replied, "I think it's premature to worry about a product's gaming performance by judging a different product which is not optimized for gaming. I guess only time will tell just how true those words actually are and just how much of a performance gain we're going to see on the gaming cards." Up next is the RX 560D, which is going to be a rebrand of the RX 460, even though the 560 already is kind of a rebrand, but they did add, more to that than they did on the other 500 series cards. So the RX 560 was a decent upgrade from the 460, but AMD still has a lot of stock of the RX 460 cards laying around. So this is kind of a marketing decision on their part to just go ahead and rebrand those RX 460s as the RX 560D. They're still going to have the same exact 896 stream processor, so really no upgrades to this card at all. They're just basically going to be flashing the BIOS so that it reads RX 560D within GPU-Z or whatever other software you're using. So there it is, the RX 560D, and as Video Card said, this very likely may not even come to the US market. It probably will remain in just the Chinese market. So we may not even see these 560Ds in the US. So if you need the D, I'm sorry, you're not going to get it. Possibly. Up next is just a quick mention of AMD Ryzen, which has been selling really well over on Amazon. Just recently, they had been back in 5th place with the Ryzen 1600 CPU as the top selling processors over on Amazon. But now they have moved into the number 2 slot, right behind the i7 7700K. This slot for number 2 was recently reserved by the 7600K, but the 1600 is now pulled into that position, and it's not really hard to wonder why. I used one of these in a system just last month. It's a really great processor with 6 cores and 12 threads, which, I mean, Intel really can't compete with that right now as far as multi-threaded workloads are concerned at that particular price point. The 7600K is selling for $235, while the 1600 right now is listed for $210. And for that, you're getting way more threads than what the i5 can offer with just 4 cores. No additional hyper-threading on that CPU at all. Other Ryzen processors in the top 10 right now are the Ryzen 1700 and the 1600X. So AMD is definitely taking some market share away from Intel, even though they are still dominating the top 10 with more processors than AMD. I would be willing to bet that just a few months ago, before Ryzen had released, the top 10 would probably be filled with probably like 90% of them would have been Intel CPUs. You might have seen like an 8320 or an 8370 in there because you could have got those pretty cheap. Although the Intel processors were just doing a lot better in terms of performance, it's nice to see AMD is finally getting in there and shaking up the marketplace, which Ryzen has kind of been all about. I also noticed that the Ryzen 1700 on here is listed for only $296, which is really cheap. This launched at $330, so now it's at $300 or just under $300 for the Ryzen 1700, which is insane because you really don't need to go out and get the 1700X or the 1800X if you're going to overclock. my favorite Ryzen 7 CPU was personally the 1700 because it had the lower TDP of 65 watts, and I was able to overclock it to 4 gigahertz, the same as my 1800X, and you could do that on the included Wraithspire cooler, which is just bananas. You can do all of that. You don't need to budget in the cost for a cooler or anything, and it's just really, really darn cheap. And this also got my interest up on what was the best-selling motherboard right now for Ryzen, which happens to be the Asus Prime X370, which is $160. And I was really happy to see that because I just picked one of these up. I actually got mine for about $100 used at Micro Center, so it was an open box deal. I got mine for $100, thankfully, and I've had no issues with the board at all. I flashed the BIOS to the latest version, and since then it has been rock solid stable inside my Gladiator build, along with the Ryzen 1600 that I mentioned earlier. So I've got no issues with this board whatsoever. There were some early reviews where people were having issues with it, but it looks like those were resolved with later BIOS updates, which was kind of the case with most AM4 motherboards at release. They had some issues with their BIOS versions and RAM compatibility, but those have gotten better in the recent months. So I wouldn't be really too concerned about this board, and some of the bad reviews out there I would kind of push to the side because, like I said, I've had absolutely zero issues with compatibility with RAM or the Ryzen 1600. Up next, we've got a NVIDIA story here where they have actually added in DirectX 12 support for Fermi and Kepler-based GPUs, which they had promised back when DirectX 12 was about to come out that was going to be the case, that it would be supported on all of their currently released hardware, but it's taken quite a while for them to actually go ahead and do this. So now they had released the driver 384.76, which actually had some issues with crashing, specifically on Watch Dogs 2, so they did release a hot fix for that, which is 384.80. But either one of those drivers basically would add in support for DirectX 12 for Fermi and Kepler-based GPUs. And, someone actually, according to Tech Report, ran the TimeSpy DirectX 12 benchmark where it only pulled in 373 points on the score, which is really not very good. According to them also, they said the 660 or the 750 Ti can put up around 1,200 points. So, yeah, that's way, way lower than I would have expected something like that to do. 373 points. Actually, well, that's the 560M, so maybe that's not too unbelievable. I'd like to see someone actually take the GTX 680 and see what they could do with that. That'd be interesting to see. I know Jay just did a video on the GTX 680, so maybe this would be worth revisiting again with a 680 if someone out there has it, and, update to the latest driver with DirectX 12 support and test out DX12 titles and see what it can do, especially in titles that have DX11 and DX12, and see how much a performance hit or gain you get from DirectX 12, if any at all. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. I hope you all enjoy your 4th of July, well, not weekend. I was going to say 4th of July weekend, but it's not the weekend. It's the middle of the week. Kind of a weird one for the 4th of July. But I'm going to be going to a barbecue later. Like I said, I'm going to be serving as the table. And yeah, please leave a like on the video down below if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're not already. And if you are already subscribed, you're a longtime viewer, don't be afraid to hit the notification bell so you can find out whenever I upload new videos like the one you saw here today. And I will catch you guys next time. Tura. Yeah, that's how it goes.